Kill me! I'm here! Kill me!
Hey everybody, this is Matthew Movies coming at you with the latest in my series on my favorite movies of all time. And this time I'm going to be talking about my 23rd favorite movie of all time, Shattered Glass. Now this is a movie that I don't think has gotten nearly enough attention. I absolutely adore this movie, and it isn't like some of the other movies I've picked where it's like huge action or documentaries that are super emotional. This is just a really, really small story that is told exceptionally well. It's based on the true story of a journalist by the name of Stephen Glass, who worked for a magazine in the United States called The New Republic that was this extremely respected political magazine that skewered a lot of figures and had a lot of enemies. And it was like the type of magazine where if you worked at it and you did a great job, you could build a career on it. And Stephen Glass went and worked for them, and for a good while he was seen as one of the stars of the magazine. But then it came out that he had been fabricating either parts or the entirities of some of the stories that he told. And that's what this movie is about. The situation that led to the discovery of what he'd done and the fallout, the immediate fallout, where he was basically trying to keep his deceptions going, and the editor that was in charge of the magazine was trying to figure out whether or not he should be trusted or not. And like I said, it's a very small story in the fact that it's really just centered on a group of people who are trying to get to the bottom of whether or not something has actually happened or not. One of the stories specifically is really the one that's kind of in the crosshairs. And the thing that amazes me about this movie is it's an ensemble piece. Like, there are lots of actors who you'd recognize. The guy who plays the main character is actually Hayden Christensen, the guy who everybody hates from Star Wars, and he does an exceptionally good job in this movie. Anytime anybody thinks of him as a bad actor, I always in my mind think of this movie, because he does a great job. Now, maybe that's because this role was specifically designed for him, or designed for an actor with his specific talents, because this is a guy who shouldn't be trusted, who when he says things, you can see kind of like the wheels turning in his head. And it's funny because I think it takes a really good actor to play somebody who isn't coming off as realistic or coming off as trustworthy. And that's the case here, but maybe it's just because he's such a bad actor that it just worked out perfectly, that him trying to be a good actor comes off like poorly. So maybe that's the case. It also has Hank Azaria, Chloe Sevigny, Peter Sarsgaard, Steve Zahn, Melanie Lynskey, Rosario Dawson, and the thing that is the key to why this movie is so great in my view is that every single character, you can really, as an audience member, put yourself in their spot. Even the character played by Hayden Christensen, Stephen Glass, who does pretty reprehensible things, and is something like doing a lot of things that you get taught even as a child not to do. He's lying and he's deceiving and doing all these things. And he comes off as extremely whiny in points and kind of annoying, which works perfectly for his character. But at the same time, you can kind of put yourself in his shoes. Like, if you had done the terrible things that he had done, how you could see his wheels turning, and you could see if you were there, like when you can put yourself back in that mindset of when you were a kid and your parents caught you doing something that you weren't supposed to do, and that kind of rushes of adrenaline as you kind of fond at trying to still come up with something that would help you get away with it. And you put yourself in that position, but even more so, you put yourself in the position of Peter Sarsgaard's character, the editor, who is in charge of discovering whether or not this really happened. And it's an unbelievable position that he was put in, and you really, really, really feel for him, because he has a lot of his staff that are against him, because they think Stephen could do no wrong. So you can really, really identify with the frustration his character must have been feeling. One of the things that is so brilliant about his character too is, like I said, you really feel where he's coming from, and as a result, there's several moments of catharsis that are jam-packed in this movie, because on behalf of him, you're like, well, like there's moments where he gets unleashed where you're like, oh, thank God, and then there's moments where like it just you feel incredulous on his behalf, and it's just crazy that this guy is trying to keep this ruse going. But at the same time, like I said, you can understand why he'd be super frustrated with his staff sticking up for this guy who said something incredibly wrong. But at the same time, you can totally feel for those staff members because you know, you have this kind of mentality where if there's somebody that you've been close to for a long time and you've never seen, or at least you don't realize you've seen them do anything wrong, and all of a sudden they're being picked on by somebody from the outside, and their editor or their boss or the person who you would expect to have their back doesn't, you can understand why they would like stick up for him, and like you could totally see yourself doing the same thing, but they're so completely in the wrong for doing so. And like it's just across the board like that. And there's also the, like I said, it comes from an outsider. There's two people who work for an outside publication who kind of pick up on this thing, and they bring it to their attention, and the things that they get put in front of them that are supposed to be backing up his claims that these things happen are so amateurish and ridiculous that you can like feel for them, that like if you were presented with this being like, oh no, this story is true because of this, you would be like, what? Like, how did anybody think that was good enough to back up a claim that they actually released in magazine form? And it's across the board like that. Like, there's so many characters there's in this movie, and all of them come across as being understandable in their position, and it's just such an incredible accomplishment that they were able to make so many figures like so relatable, and as a result it really draws you into this movie, or at least it did me. And by the end of this movie, like it stuck with me for days afterwards. And I've actually watched this movie probably at least like 20 or so times, because every, you know, year or so since I've seen it, and like even I guess even less than a year, like every, let's say 6 to 8 months or whatever, I'll kind of something will come up that'll remind me of it, and I'll start reflecting on it again, and like how impressed I am with the everything across the board with this movie, like the direction. It is perfect for this movie. Like, there's nothing flashy in this movie, but there shouldn't be. Everything is shot in a way that it, like, the direction and the editing and all that stuff are invisible to your eye. Like, you're never focusing on any of that, which is exactly what you needed for this movie, because you need to be focusing on the characters and the story, and that's everything that from a filmmaking standpoint that they did. And the other thing that I always look back on in this movie too is after watching it, I kind of looked into the story a bit more, and from what I could tell, their telling of how these frauds came to light are extremely accurate to how they actually his house of cards actually fell. And I just love this movie even more for that. Like, I think I really hope that there's at least 1 or 2 people who watch this video who seek out this movie. And I, like, to me, I think it was an exceptionally well made movie that, like I said, don't expect flash, don't expect anything other than a story that is compelling and characters that you can relate to. So that's my thoughts on Shattered Glass and the reason why I love it so much. If you've seen the movie, please let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Please hit that like button. It's huge for my channel. It makes a big difference in the amount of people that end up seeing these videos that are outside of my subscriber base. And speaking of subscriber base, if you are new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. I love talking to people about movies, and I would love for you to stick around and be one of the people who I have a regular discourse with about the movies that I love and the movies that I don't. It means the world to me. Other than that, have yourself a nice day.